Okay, for a long time now, I've been advocating the case that the material world, matter in general, including your material body, is a useful mental construct, that it has no intrinsic reality. And as usual, I get criticized for this by mainstream scientists because all mainstream science is based on the idea that matter is fundamental, and hence also the hard problem of consciousness. How do our objects, including the brain, which is a physical object, even though very complex with neural networks and all kinds of genetic activity, how does a material object, the brain, which by the way has no experience of itself, if you put a knife through the brain doesn't experience anything. So somebody gets a headache, it's not because the headache is in the brain, it's in the covering of the brain with meninges and so on. So how does a material object create experience, any experience, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, intuition, insight, imagination, creativity, transcendence? Science sounds kind of crazy, isn't it? That we believe that matter creates mind. It doesn't make sense, but yet it's the hardcore principle of all science. All science is based on this one idea that matter is fundamental and mind somehow emerges. You know, it's a late phenomenon in evolution and emergent property. I believe that's nonsense, but you can't just dismiss the fact that all of our science, which is very successful, is based on the fact that matter is fundamental, and that what we experience as the physical world is some experience here, but we can't explain how that happens. But the physical world is independent of our experience of it. And yet we can't prove that, because the only way we can know the physical world is by experiencing it. And that also includes your own body. You can only know your body by experiencing it. So let's do an experiment to prove that what I'm saying could be true, could be probably true. I'm looking for a material object, and I found a beautiful little material object here. Nice little telescope. Okay. Very interesting that I found this, because this is how we observe distant objects. And if you turn this into a microscope, then this is how we observe micro objects. In any case, how do we know a physical object? How do we experience a physical object? Is hardness, this is very hard, is hardness an intrinsic property of this object? Okay. Well, hardness is a subjective experience, it's a sensation. And this hardness would be very different to a crocodile because it has very thick skin. And then it would be very different to an insect, that hardness. So the hardness I'm experiencing, right, is a human experience of hardness. And that hardness is not an intrinsic property of this, but hardness is an experience I'm having in consciousness, in awareness. And the same can be said of shape. The same can be said of solidity and color. Okay, these do not exist as properties of a physical world. They're experiences in awareness. And as such, they're experiences which we call sensations. Every experience is a sensation. every experience. But then we interpret a particular sensation as this object, or as this object, or even as this object, hand. Yeah. The softness of the hand that I experience, semi-softness, is a sensation. But the hand itself is also an experience. Now, what is it? The hand as an experience, it's a sensation, it's a color, it's a shape, right? And it feels solid. These are sensations, raw sensations that we then translate into the concept that this is a hand, that this is telescope, that this is a phone, etc. So just because something feels hard or solid doesn't mean it's material. It just means hardness and softness is your experience using your biology, your nervous system to experience a particular quality of knowing or experience. Giving that particular quality of knowing and experience a name converts it into a material object. This is how names and forms match each other. As I've said before, Nam, Roop. So if what I say makes sense, that we need to re-examine the relationship between mind and matter, then we have to challenge the assumption that, number one, reality exists independent of perception, number one. And number two, that actually the so-called physical world is a mental world, a mental construct. It's not an independent entity. And even the mental construct is a human construct. So the whole thing that we call the universe, with the sun and moon and stars and galaxies and physical bodies and animals and rocks, all of that, including your thoughts and interpretations about that, are experiences in consciousness. They appear on the screen of awareness, even your interpretation of it. That screen is consciousness. What appears on the screen of consciousness is sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. The interpretation of that becomes mind, body, and the universe. If we actually totally understand this, that consciousness, which is a field of infinite possibilities, is constantly, and particularly through the human mind, consciousness is constantly interpreting itself, conceiving itself, governing itself, modifying itself as the entire universe, which contains you and me, then going to the source of this experience, which is called pure consciousness, helps us not only revise our interpretation of reality, but actually helps us reverse engineer reality. Okay, you can reverse engineer reality. That means the reality of your body, the physical universe. This is actually the domain of yogis, which realize that reality is different in different states of consciousness. So when we access different states of consciousness, like Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness, which is pure consciousness, when we abide in that, so it becomes a constant knowing, abiding in pure consciousness, which is called Turiya Tata, cosmic consciousness. when we see that everything is made of consciousness, which is called divine consciousness, and experience that. And when we realize that that consciousness is non-local, outside of space-time, and a single unified experience of reality, but of multiple realities simultaneously, when we get to that level, then we become siddhas, supernormal beings, metahumans that can reverse engineer material reality, all of it. So I'm putting out a course in this, and it will attempt to help you to get a deeper understanding in this, and how to become a siddha, a metahuman, if not a total metahuman, at least a semi-metahuman, which will be a great evolutionary jump, and then from there onwards to being a full metahuman, a full siddha, and soar with extraordinary non-local potentials, otherwise called siddhis or supernormal abilities. Well, that's it for today. Take care, my friends, and I hope to see you in the noosphere. And you can start by engaging with me by going to deepakchopra.ai. By the way, my next book is also on this subject. It's called Awakening: How to Live a Life of Freedom and Enlightenment, or The Path to Freedom and Enlightenment, something like that. Take care, friends, and have a wonderful day.